having an interesting show for you today. Hope that you had a good night, and I hope that you were able to enjoy our talk about, uh, oh goodness, okay, our talk about uh, the Indigenous Peoples Day yesterday. Incredible, wonderful. And so check it on the Santita Jackson and Friends page and on YouTube. That's where we had it. It's good to be with you today. And this, boy, did I have some fun there when I, oh my gosh. So let me turn this and get this together right now. Okay. These are things. Okay. Reverend Thurston, how are you? Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you so much. Just had massive, boy, had some issues this morning with my, you know what, I'm going to have to do an upgrade on all my equipment because I really need office grade equipment, I mean, not like the high, I just, that's what I need. I need to go, like, I'm in an office. That's what I need to do. Yeah, so I'm like, no, I'm working uh, this equipment just a
Amazon
little
employees
bit
earn at
too
least
much.
$15 an hour,
And
but
so what I need to do
$15
for
is
them
just the start. That's why we pay more.
Is distribution
More where the
that it is doing regular work. That's not what I'm saying. I am working this stuff. So anyway, but thank you for being with us today. I'm glad you're here. And sorry, I'm just a little pressed today. A little bit more than normal. I'm always looking at the last little bit. You see what's happening at Southwest. Baby, they have been canceling thousands of flights. Thousands. And it's no. The what is it? The pilots. They're saying that it's weather. No, it's the pilots. They're doing this. It's not a not so soft strike. And so 40% of their flights yesterday were canceled. So, they canceled 800 on Saturday, more than 1,000 on Sunday. Oh, no. And we're going to see a lot of it. This is how we're beginning to see. They're seeking to block the vaccination. So that's what's happening with them. And it's so Southwest, the executives are saying, oh no, it's not a problem. I'm like, sweetie, yeah, it's a problem. Because I just gotta I'm supposed to be flying out with y'all. And I told my father, I said, I don't think we're gonna be able to do that. Well, I don't know how he was going, but this is how I was going. So there we go. So here we go. Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's a joy to be with you on Tuesday, October 12th, 2021. I am Santita Jackson, coming to you from the nation's largest progressive talk radio, I was about to say AM 950 radio, but those are my brothers and sisters to the north in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I'm based here in Chicago at WCPT 820. It's a joy to be with you today. I want you to call me at 773 763 9278, 773 763. Everybody, all my morning stars over here on YouTube, thank you so much for and friends page. Yeah, well, we can keep it up. There you go. And I want to hear from you. If you want to text me at 773 763 9278, GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to do that. I want to hear your thoughts today. We're going to be talking about those people who are unbanked. More and more people are not allowed to spend cash in stores. Has that been an experience for you? I've had that experience. But it disproportionately impacts people of color, black and brown people, and most particularly black people. And so we're going to be talking about that. New Jersey Congressman Donald Payne has legislation that will make it illegal for you not to accept legal tender from the government. How about that? What happens when you have an emergency? When you can't get to the ATM, when the ATMs are down? Yeah. And why are we being, uh, what's the point of having cash? And why are we being banned from having cash? Something to think about. A cashless society, I don't know about you, doesn't make me comfortable. What do you think, everybody? Cashless society, yes or no? 773 763 9278. Of course, we've got John Nichols with us today talking about this Trump memo on a coup. Do you think we paid enough attention to that? Increasingly, he is looking like the candidate to beat for the Republicans and maybe for the Democrats in 2024. We keep talking about him. He is now having rallies, and the rallies are getting huge turnouts. What do you think about that? Should we pay attention to this coup memo? What about the January 6th hearings? What about them? What about them? Who will ignore the subpoenas, and will they be allowed to do that? And of course, we have a lot of questions for Dr. Deborah Holden, our health guru, epidemiologist, brilliant, about COVID 19. What about these booster shots? What's the difference between a booster shot and the third shot? Yeah. So we're going to ask her about that. Got a lot to talk about today on the Santita Jackson Show. So let us get right to it right here on Santita Jackson, the Santita Jackson Show. Chicago, we're going to have a high of 69 degrees today. It will be partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, a high of 66 degrees, partly cloudy. The Dow closed down 250 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed down 93 points. The S&P 500 closed down 30 points. The White Sox will be facing off against the Astros in the major league, in the American League playoffs. I love it. I love it. Go Sox, go. And then last night for Monday Night Football, the Ravens, well, they were triumphant over the Colts. 31-25, everybody. Well, it seems that there's an NFL coach who really got into some hot water because of some emails that were just, quite frankly, that are kind of old, but they were numerous. Las Vegas Raiders coach John Gruden has resigned over reports he used homophobic, racist, and misogynistic language in emails as an ESPN analyst. Now, he had a $100 million 10-year contract, and that's over now, everybody. He has coached the Raiders since the 2018 season. Critics had called him to be fired after the Wall Street Journal reported that he used racially insensitive language in a 2011 email to describe the executive director of the NFLPA, DeMaurice Smith, everybody. The New York Times reported it reviewed more emails and found he denounced women being employed as on-field officials and a team drafting an openly gay player. Now, going after women, well, most of the NFL is 70% of the players black, but 30 to 40% of the fans are women. So they got rid of him. Wow, gas prices at the height of the coronavirus pandemic last year, the cost of energy was dirt cheap as roads and airports sat nearly empty. Well, that's not true anymore, everybody. The world economy has reopened and energy demand is back, but the supply hasn't kept up. And if you noticed, gas prices are creeping up. They're not creeping up, they're inching up. They're going up, and they're very, very high. As a result, All of these prices have skyrocketed, everybody, leading to sticker shock for many Americans filling up at the pump. The national average price for gasoline hit a 7-year high of $3.27 a gallon yesterday. It's much higher where I live. Wow, everybody. Texas Governor Greg Abbott issued an executive order banning all state entities, including private employers, from enforcing vaccine mandates. The latest move in his crusade against public health measures during the coronavirus pandemic. What do you think about that? The order states that no groups or businesses can enforce the vaccine against anyone who objects for any reason of personal conscience. Do you agree with that? Do you agree? You let me know what you're thinking. And what about what's happening with Southwest Airlines? What about that? 40% of their flights were canceled yesterday. 40%, everybody. Now, executives at Southwest Airlines are saying that it's because of weather. Nothing is amiss. Nothing wrong here. Do you agree with that, everybody? What do you think? More than 800 flights were canceled on Saturday. More than 1,000 were canceled on Sunday. 40% canceled yesterday. Wow, more than 350 flights. So, what gives, everybody? Well, we will see. We will see. Monday's cancellations, well, excuse me, 10%, I misspoke, but 1,400 other flights, or roughly 40%, were delayed. And what happens if you get stuck in the airport? There was a time when I was growing up, you would get a voucher, you'd be able to go to a hotel, you'd be able to get something to eat. Now that's over. That's been over for a couple of decades. Now you are stuck. So if you fly, you need to have some change so you can go to a hotel, everybody. Think about it. Think about it. Let's go to you, Pastor Thurston, teaching pastor from the House of Hope, Salem Baptist Church. Indeed, of course, his book is Mirror Moments. Please go get it. It will make you take a good look at your face, at yourself. And that's an important thing to do, that relationship with yourself. Boy, how important that is. Okay, how you doing, Pastor Thurston? Always a joy. Oh, always a joy. We love hearing from you. You make us think, and you make us act. You make us want to do, and you show us how to do better. You show us how to do better. So, what's the good news today? Ooh. Yes. Mhm.
Couple of weeks ago that I was in Morocco, and I spent a few days in the desert, in the Sahara Desert, about 7 hours outside of Marrakesh. And while we had an amazing time at our riad, as we drove through some of the small towns that were scattered in the desert, I said to myself, wow, many of these people will never see the world beyond this desert place. Mm-hmm. They'll never experience the luxuries of what we classify and consider as the modern world. It calls me to appreciate how fortunate and how privileged I am. I also found myself feeling sorry for these Moroccan people, as I assumed that they weren't as happy with their life as I am with mine. But I had to ask myself again the question, is that really true? Or are they just as happy as I am? Because the reality is that their simple lives are probably a whole lot more focused on what really matters in life than mine is and yours is. And I wonder if they were standing there looking at my friends and I and thought to themselves, oh, I really feel sad for those Americans because they got it wrong, simply because they allow materialism to rule their lives. There's a study that looked at happiness levels of people who won the lottery and people who became paraplegics. It compared the level of happiness of these two groups of people a year after that event occurred. One losing limbs or becoming paraplegic, and the other winning the lottery. And believe it or not, that study deemed and determined that both groups were equally happy a year after those events. And that seems crazy. Harvard professor Daniel Gilbert describes this as synthetic happiness. It's the happiness that comes from our good thoughts about events that may seem bad at first. And here's the thing. We often make things better in our head than they will be in reality. We overestimate the positive effect of getting what we want and the negative impact of not getting what we want. And because we don't believe that we can be just as happy not getting what we want, we end up missing out on so much happiness in our lives. But here's the good news that I need everybody to hold on to. We all have the built-in ability to just be happy with what we have instead of making happiness something that we're depend on concerning certain things going our way or us acquiring certain things that we think will secure happiness. I live in a world that's full of choices. Many of those Moroccan people in the Sahara Desert living in the midst of those sand dunes don't have as many options and choices as I do. But maybe it's all the options and all the choices that really get in the way of happiness. Many of them probably don't even think that they have another choice other than being in the space and the place in life that they are. And their mindset is to be happy and content in that space. If people who are paraplegic can be just as happy as those who've won the lottery, then what excuse do we have not to be happy? The answer is none. We all can live a happy life. We just need to put ourselves in the right mindset because happiness truly is an inside job.
Amen. Well, let me ask this very quickly before I bring on Dr. You make me ask myself a question. Do options, particularly in these wealthy societies, or do we have? I'll just give you a quick example. Well, I had there's one television at home that I watch the most, and I kept so much programming on it. The poor box just blew. It finally just couldn't take it anymore. So it really took me out of my rhythm. So I said, okay, well, I've got to go here, watch. It just took me out of my rhythm, which made me unhappy. But you know what I did?
Yes.
I turned on a lot of different stations where they tell stories, right? I mean, just on different satellite channels and things like that.
Yes.
And that made me happy. I had to call my mother because that's what she does. She doesn't do a lot of TV, does radio. She does radio, and she does a lot of different radio shows and things like that. And I said, are these distractions or are they options, Pastor? Because a lot of what we're doing is just like busy work. It's not real stuff.
Yes. It has no real life. Yeah, we're not focused on what really matters oftentimes.
And you were with a culture, with a civilization, excuse me, because we've got a culture. We're a society. We're not a civilization yet. These people doing what they've been doing since the beginning of time.
That's it.
And it's so funny. We think that they should be learning from us. Look at us, my child. What life is about. Oh my gosh. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's how they were looking at us.
Yeah.
You all have so much to learn.
because you need your smartphone. You need this on your watch. You. My father said, don't, if you've got to be very careful, because don't let your wants become your needs. Because if you do, your needs will become your wants.
That's true.
Don't let your wants become your needs. Because if you do, your needs will become your wants. Wow.
That's true.
No,
That's it.
thank you for that. You took me back today. Thank you. And how can we get this
Yes,
book,
ma'am.
Mirror Moments? You will get much more of this when you get this book. You've got to get it, everybody.
You can head over to my website, Stephen with the PH, Stephen J. Thurston, THURSTON.com. It's right there. As soon as you go into the website, it pops right up. I set it up for you. No looking and searching.
Well, you know what? I'm going to put that. You send me the link so that I can post it up here on our chat
Sounds good.
line. And Joyce and Keith and Mark, everybody, can you please go over to my YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show? We're trying to really populate that place. And that's what we were told that we really, really need to do. So we're going to do that. But thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much for all that you are and all that you do. The teaching pastor of the Salem Baptist Church, the House of Hope, the great Reverend Stephen Thurston, indeed, from a preaching family. His grandfather was one of my father's spiritual fathers in the ministry more than 50 years ago. We thank God for the Thurston family. And then, his father became my father's kind of almost baby brother, kind of almost. and so we just keep
That's
the
it.
Thurston's just keep, and the Jacksons keep going forward together. I love you so much, everybody.
Love you
Please,
too.
please go to his website, get this book, because really we need to work on ourselves, everybody. 773-763-9278. Dr. Deborah Furholden, before I come to you, let me go to Steve. Steve called in from Chicago, and you said you had something that was on your mind today, and you said before we even get into COVID-19 and health, you wanted to say something. What's on your mind, Steve?
Yeah, good morning. I subscribe to Ogden Nax's the poet who said that happiness comes when you least expect it. And in my existence, that's true. That's a truism.
Yes.
I just want to talk about how unique Trump is in the history of the United States. I mean, you got a president who's got his whole Justice Department running for the exits. He's got generals calling foreign countries, assuring them that he's not going to bomb them. He's coaching his vice president into turning over an election, which is unique in history, in the American history. I mean, if he can run for president with those credentials, Mickey Mouse should run for mayor. Anyway, a million say it. Have a good morning.
Steve, you're always calling me with these gems, sending you much love. I hear you. But this is, everybody has the right to run. And we have the right. And I think that we have to start looking at look at what we need. Because we put our wants of our needs, and then we start chasing after what we need. That is not right. That is not right. Dr. Deborah Furholden, world-renowned epidemiologist, indeed, comes out of Johns Hopkins, and they brought her to Michigan State University to create their School of Public Health, their medical school. She is the Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University. Always glad to be with you. We're going to bring on Dr. Shanina Knighton so we can talk about infection prevention and vaccine hesitancy. A lot of people had a lot of questions yesterday. So Laura from Atlanta and everybody else want you to call us back so that we can hear from you and you can ask them the questions, because I'm not the doctor. Thank you very much to my so just very quickly, I have a couple of minutes before we go to break. I've been hearing a lot about the third dose versus the booster dose. What is the difference?
That's a really great question. So they are, in fact, one and the same, okay? There is, right now for Pfizer, there's just one vaccine. Caveat, there's a lower dose for the younger populations, but there's one vaccine, okay? And so you get 2 doses of the exact same vaccine. What is in the vial for both doses is the same. what is in the vial for the third dose or the booster dose is the same as what you got for the first or the second dose. The only slight nuance in the language is people will oftentimes refer to a third dose for people who have compromised immune systems such that they might not have gotten the full benefit of the first two doses because their immune system doesn't work quite as well as others. So we say those people will need a third dose, right? For people who, otherwise healthy immune systems functioning normally, what we're learning is that immunity wanes. And as immunity wanes, you want to boost immunity, and you do that with a shot or a booster dose. But it is the exact same thing in the vial. It's just timing and who's getting it, changes a little bit how we describe it.
Wow. When we get back on the other side, I want to know what you think about people are not taking these shots in various areas. We have about 56% of Americans are fully vaccinated, but that leaves, 2/5 of the country, a little more than that, unvaccinated. They're going to lose 200,000 plus doses of the COVID-19 vaccine in Louisiana alone by the end of the month. If these vaccines are not taken, I want you to respond to that when we get to the other side of the break. Because when I saw those numbers, I was absolutely shocked. I said, well, okay, if these people don't want to take them, should they be sent to other parts of the country or to other parts of the world? And I want to know, when you come back, I want you to talk to me about that. Because you've been talking about equity, not just here in the United States. You've been looking at global equity because it's a real issue. It's an airborne virus, everybody. We're one global community. Everybody needs these vaccines, and we need the therapeutics. We need everything. Are we going to share the wealth? Are we going to share the wealth? It seems that we're not doing that. Moderna is not sharing the patents. I want you to talk about that. And then I'm going to be talking about a lot of vaccine confusion. A lot of people are trying to figure out the boosters, the third shot. You heard Dr. Deborah Verholden explain that to us, and the boosters, and just what we should be doing, how we should take all of this stuff, because we still don't know. We still don't know. And the masks, washing your hands, the protocols. How can you keep yourself safe? More of the Santita Jackson Show. We're going to be talking about being unbanked. More and more establishments are refusing your cash, and that is locking out Black and brown people and poor people. And John Nichols in the second hour. More of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Dr. Deb.
Joan Esposito, Live Local and Progressive.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm like sending you stuff in the middle of the night. I am so sorry, girl.
Energy efficiency program.
No problem.
When I push send, because I do it like automatically, I said, what am I doing? Pardon me, I'm downloading this. And I'm following what's happening at Southwest. I have
how many more flights did they cancel yesterday? They were at 1,800 over the weekend.
800 on Saturday, 1,000, more than 1,000 on Sunday. They said 10%, but I heard something different this morning on the radio. I mean, on television. But 1,400 were delayed yesterday. What does that mean? And of course the executives are saying, oh, there's nothing to see here. No, these pilots. One speculation, and it sounds very credible. The pilots are pushing back against the vaccine mandates, and they're going to court. And it's illegal for them to strike. So you do the math.
It's illegal for them to strike?
More and more, President Reagan did a whole real number on unions. And what's so ironic is that so many union members, rank and file, endorsed him in 1980. But particularly when he fired Patco, all of the air traffic controllers in the United States of America, that was an almost fatal blow to the union movement. Horrible. So, yeah.
Well, I'm in Uniontown. I'm in Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
In Flint.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Oh, you know what's up. So, I mean, and it was like, it's been a lot.
So what do? Just call out sick?
Yep, that's what they're doing. Oh yeah, oh yeah, that's what they're doing. At least if you go online and you see the chitter chatter, people who are saying, I mean, it sounds reasonable to me. People know how to, folks, what do they say? The servant is the master. Okay. So don't think that if you have someone working for you, that you are not, that that they are subservient to you. Don't think that.
Yeah.
Don't think that. We all have mutually reciprocating relationships. We all need each other. Don't be too high and mighty for your fans. If you don't have people who like you, you have no place in the world. So, I mean, I've seen my father stop. He has even missed planes taking pictures.
Yeah.
And people wanted to play basketball in our backyard. We didn't have a big court. It was just a little teeny weeny thing. Hey, Dr. Knighton. But he said, first of all, maybe in 10, 20, 30, 40 years, playing in our backyard might mean something to somebody. You don't know, it might save somebody. And it might help them to, go to college. Maybe I can buy a house. Maybe I can, and do I've met several people who said that. They said, I didn't live in your neighborhood, but I couldn't believe someone in your neighborhood would let us come in your backyard, and then your mother would barbecue, and we could eat there, and then it was like, you don't know, I didn't know. I hadn't been to a house like that. Our house it's a big old house, full of a lot of love.
20 seconds.
And it was just a real blessing. I sat next to a gentleman. First time that happened, I was at a funeral of one of my neighbors. And he said it did so much for me. I went to college. My wife and I have a house. My son's in college. It was just a whole thing. So stand by, everybody.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Determined, unstoppable, achieving the impossible. We're standing tall with our heads held high. We are victorious.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Of course, every morning we are with Dr. Deborah Holden, epidemiologist, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University. We're so honored to have her because many of you have a lot of questions about the vaccines. Some of you are hesitant, maybe either to take the shot, or once you've taken the shot, you don't feel like you have enough information. There's a lot, and we're very privileged and honored to have this woman with us who takes the time out of her busy schedule to share the information. And then she brought this brilliant young woman with us. She said, you got to have her on because we don't have someone like her. Let me have you explain why you felt that it was important to include Dr. Shanina Knighton, infection preventionist, registered nurse, research scholar from Case Western Reserve University. Why did you think it was important to have her in this particular discussion, in this pandemic discussion at this time, Dr. Verholden?
Because that I was getting the time, despite the things we were saying, what can I do to keep myself safe? I would hear from people who were infected, and they would say things like, I was so careful, or I was being so safe. I don't understand how I, caught this thing. So many people, a very good friend of mine, her sister, said, I left the house one time, and I was so cautious. How did this happen? And I had never heard of the field of infection prevention. I'd heard of being a preventionist, but that's a whole different type of work. So when I found out what she did and the fact that she was certified and one of only about 5,000 in the U.S., I thought, how come this is a voice that's not at the forefront of these conversations? This is the real practical stuff that people need, not just during the pandemic. What she teaches people would help you in the pandemic. It would help you just in community settings in general. It would help you in hospital settings. It would help you be a better observer and champion for your loved ones who might be in a care facility. You know, Dr. Fauci is an infectious disease physician.
What is that?
His expertise is in treating people with infectious diseases. That is his specialty. He's got now an expansive amount of public health just on the ground experience in his role as the director at the National Institute on Allergy and Infectious Diseases. But that is very different from somebody who understands from both an individual and an environmental perspective how to prevent and reduce and control the spread of infection. That is what people need. That is also what we've needed this entire time on the leadership as we think about what resources are going to get allocated, how we're going to get schools ready for kids to come back, how we're going to improve workplaces for people to come back, public housing, all of these things. We need somebody with that infection prevention expertise at the table.
Why do you think she and the few people like her who exist, who have this training, who have this expertise, why haven't they been included in this discussion?
I don't know. A part of me feels like a lot of the folks that we're seeing, who you see on the news or who you see getting these appointments, it feels like a popularity contest. You know, and you also have to say, you know, to some extent what people want to hear. And I think both Dr. Knighton and I are sensitive to the fact that we are in a pandemic. It's taking a toll on people. Nobody wants to be an alarmist, but we try to give people, you know, honesty and truth and transparency so people have what they need. That's a little bit different from giving people what they want. You know, Dr. Fauci just bust out, oh, it's okay for the kids to go trick-or-treating as long as it's outdoors. And if you're not vaccinated, you should get vaccinated. Ask yourself, don't you want the kids to enjoy Halloween? Go get vaccinated. Like, what does that have to do with kids going trick-or-treating? I love the social media outpour is, who asked you? Who even asked you, Dr. Fauci?
But you know, because I want you to respond to that, because, you know, that's part of why we ever here today, because people were, they really took him on, Dr. Verholden. They really did. I mean, these folks
should have, because the real question that people want to know is, if it's okay, how do I do it safely? That's what people actually need. Not some on high, you know, I give you all permission to go trick-or-treating. How do we do that safely? What are the parameters? What do we need to be mindful of? Should the child have on a mask underneath of their Halloween mask? Should we include a mask as a part of the, you know, the costume? What about all the exchange of candy? What are the recommendations for how to, you know, avoid that? You know, what if somebody at the house who's giving out candy has COVID, didn't know it, and, you know, got a little contaminated thing of candy that they're reaching in and dropping into your bag? What should you do with the stuff when you get it home? Like, the real deal, not just the, and basically what he said wasn't even scientific. And it's another thing that I love about the distinction between Dr. Knighton and Dr. Fauci. Even if Dr. Fauci gave those recommendations, what would they be based on? His own personal or maybe even professional opinion. Dr. Knighton actually does research in how to prevent infection spread. She actually does the research. So it's not just some well-meaning idea she has. She can say, you know, using this type of technology or using this type of approach causes a 50% reduction in the types of germs we see on hands of patients in hospitals. It causes an 85% reduction in the spread of this particular virus, which is normally fed from caregivers to patients. She actually has done and is continuing to do the research to be able to say with some authority which of these strategies work and how well they work and for whom and under what conditions. Okay. And that's what we need right now. We need to be relying on and listening to experts, not just smart people with degrees.
Well, you know what? That takes us to, we are now in the Halloween season. I mean, and all the stuff that you put out there, Dr. Verholden. Wow. How should our children trick or treat? I mean, how's that going to work, Dr. Knighton?
So it's interesting because we are still talking about a lot of factors that goes into this. Meaning that when children will go from house to house to get candy, is this a situation of where they are being handed candy, or is this a situation of where they are digging inside of a bowl? Okay. And so if this were me and I was the person giving away the candy to keep children safe, I would actually hand them either a Ziploc bag, or I would make sure that I'm administering the candy and placing it in their hands. And making sure that I'm practicing hand hygiene in between. Maybe not in between each kid, but even if I was doing it on a half an hour to an hour basis, just to make sure that I'm staying clean to be able to administer it. The other piece is as a parent, I would do two approaches. I would actually have, because we know that COVID lives on plastic, right? We know the germs there. There's always been a traditional rule of kids not eating candy if it's out of the wrapper. So that's already a given. But I would make sure that if I wanted my kids so badly to eat candy on Halloween, I would have some candy that would be, let's say, from my home, meaning that I purchased it, and I would allow their Halloween candy to sit for 3 or 4 days. We know that the virus is no longer present after 3 or 4 days. And so that will allow that if it was present on, let's say, the plastic wrappers of the candy, at least it'll be dead by the time they begin to enjoy the candy. So that would just be me personally, is I would not allow my kids to enjoy it right away if I had that skepticism of concern and wanted to have peace of mind. So that's how I would approach it. Because there is really no way to sanitize the candy. There's no way to ensure, potentially if someone has been talking over the candy, right? So someone may be sitting there, maybe masked or unmasked. They may say, hey, well, we're outside, so we're unmasked. So I'm going to talk to the kids, and they may actually be talking over the candy and spilling droplets over it as they're trying to greet trick-or-treaters. So for me, just precautionary wise, that's what I would do for my kids. And if I was administering the actual candy, I would make sure that I'm not talking directly over the actual containers that contain the candy. And I would have protocols outlined in regards to hand hygiene to make sure that I'm staying safe. I've also seen a lot of creative mechanisms where individuals will put stakes in their yard, like sticks, and they'll actually have the trick-or-treat candy attached to the stake, so it's a contactless trick-or-treating where the kids are just able to grab the candy from out of the yard opposed to having to come in contact with the individual. So I think that we have some creative ways in order for us to be able to address Halloween. It's just thinking about how can I eliminate some of the barriers that may actually put me or a trick-or-treater at risk.
Would you recommend having house parties? Instead of, say, the kids going through the neighborhood, if they gather at one place, so that one person can dispense with the candies?
I still think it's a catch-22 because we know I love kids. I have kids, but we know that they can be a petri dish for germs.
Oh, yeah.
And the one thing that's been so disheartening about the pandemic is the fact that we are so gung-ho and focused on COVID that we're ignoring RSV, we're ignoring the flu, we're ignoring the common cold, we're ignoring, fall allergies right now, which cause noses to run. We're ignoring the fact that the seasons are changing, right? And so when we are thinking about the fact that all of these children may be in this environment, kids have a different way of being detected for germs than what we do. So their symptoms sometimes look different from ours. They may be just complaining of a tummy ache, and it could be COVID or it could be something else. So for me, and then understanding that a lot of these kids are back at school, so it's a hit or miss. We also talking about stomach viruses. So it's not to say that they wouldn't be able to participate. I'm just not sure that I would be doing it under the roof of a home. It would have to be in some sort of outside environment, and I would have to make sure that there's protocols outlined, meaning that, kids are having to sanitize their hands when they are coming in. There are timeouts, meaning that at regular intervals of a half an hour to an hour, their hands are being cleaned. If kids are being sat at tables and they're not going to stay in the same exact spot, are those surfaces being wiped down in between activities that may be held? When kids are talking about candy, right, because we're talking about individual bags, are they labeled or identified in a way where we know that kids aren't going to be picking up someone else's candy and potentially, sharing germs in that manner? So I think that there are different things that we would have to consider if we were talking about some sort of house party. And that's even if we're talking about kids that are within your own family, that you're getting some cousins that you're getting together with. All of this is still a potential risk. These risks, they increase when we're talking about kids going to school, when we're talking about adults, that work. And think about adults that are, I don't really like the term essential worker because I need the garbage man. I need everybody. Okay, so I can't really say essential and non-essential, but just the more that we are exposed to individuals in our daily work lives, it also increases the risk.
Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. What do you think about that? I mean, you just heard Medi just said, COVID lives on plastic. That's good to know. These are things we don't know, Dr. Deb. And I tell you, your girl, Chapearl, Dr. Deborah Holden, she's resolved it all. She said, just buy your kids some candy. That's it. Just go get your kids some candy. Well, let me switch tracks just a little bit. In the state of Louisiana, they have dispensed more than 4 million doses of the vaccine, but they've had to throw away more than 200,000 doses. That's a lot. That's a lot of vaccine, Dr. Deb, to release, to have to throw away if people don't take them. Is there a process? Is there a protocol, if you will? I think we've almost overused that term, but I mean, what is the protocol? What's the process if we get so close to the edge when we know that 10,000, 100,000, 200,000 or more vaccines are not going to be used when so many people in the world need them or so many people in the world want them? Should they be allowed to expire?
I mean, who would be the gatekeeper for that? Right? So when you ask that question, who do we ask that of? I personally know that our tax dollars subsidize all of this. And so I think we should have a say. I think it's criminal to throw vaccine away when globally you've got a lot of people who want it and just simply can't afford it and don't have access. Whole countries where they just, it's just, only a very small elite few have even had the opportunity to get vaccinated. So I think all of those vaccines need to hit the highways and the byways well before they expire. It's sad but true. We just don't have the demand here. We just don't have the demand. So why not be better global stewards of the resource? That's what I say.
What do you think, everybody? 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. What about waiving the patents? People are calling on Moderna, for example, to waive vaccine patents. What are they? And why are they refusing to share the patents with the rest of the world, Dr. Deb?
Oh, that's a moneymaker. That's like having a recipe. Remember when your grandmama wouldn't give you a certain recipe? It had to be passed down to you at a certain point, but she knew that you could appreciate it. And the reason grandma didn't give it to you right away is because you would then turn around and give it to one of your girlfriends. You had to wait for it. You had to wait for it. You had to demonstrate that you could be patient and that you could be trusted with this family recipe. That's what these patents are, except their grandma's cookie recipe is just attached to those delicious cookies. This is attached to $1 billion invention. They're making money hand over fist on these vaccines. And a bunch of people try to say, not really. And that is poppycock. I'm here to tell you that is complete and total poppycock. These pharmaceutical companies are making money hand over fist on these vaccines. And what do they care if we throw them away? They get paid whether or not it goes in an arm or in the trash.
But you know what? Hold on. I want to open this question up. I'd like for you to answer it, Dr. Deb, and I want Dr. Knighton to answer this. Merck came up, they pulled out of the vaccine race. They said, okay, we're going to work on therapeutics. Okay, they have a therapeutic that many people are saying it's quite promising. If people were given the placebo, obviously it didn't work. Like saline, a shot of nothing, salt water. But if you got their shot and if you got their pill, well, guess what? It cut hospitalizations by 50%. It costs a little more than $17 to make this pill, but they're selling it for more than $700. It's a markup of more than 40 times, okay? Whoa. How can that even be legal? It is not ethical. I mean, because if you do not have insurance, too bad for you. Dr. Deb.
Yeah. Yep. This is not the first time we've seen this, though. We saw this with the antiretrovirals for HIV.
Yes.
This is just not new. It's not new. It's like a real perverse, inhumane form of like capitalism and a free market. It's just like what that is. If it's really perverted and just twisted into something that instead of engenders competition, brings out the has people just cash out on their basic human decency.
Wow.
And it wouldn't bother me so much making people in countries that could pay, but where's the stewardship? And so, it's for better or worse. In a lot of other countries, people can reverse engineer a lot of these drugs and treatments. They'll just reverse engineer them. But it's like trying to reverse engineer grandma's cookie recipe. If you got the recipe, you can do a whole lot better than having to figure it out yourself. But people do figure it out. But do we really want that? Don't we want every human being on the planet to have what they keep peddling as a safe and effective vaccine? And the best way to do that is to share the recipe.
Dr. Knighton?
So I think that's yes.
I don't understand how Americans can pay for something and yet we have no say in how much it costs. And these people still have not figured out Medicare for all. Because you can get the vaccine, but if you get sick, you got to pay a whole lot of money. There's something about that that's just, you don't really want me healthy then. I don't know, Dr. Knighton. I mean, there's so many disconnects here. And I think we have an opportunity to make the connections so that we can prevent not just COVID, hepatitis, pneumonia, everything. But if you do get sick, and a lot of people get sick and they go to work anyhow, they ought to be able to get well and not worry about going into the poorhouse. Dr. Knighton, your thoughts about this, about these expiring vaccines and access, and then, the huge markups in medications. What is that? I've got a couple of minutes.
Dr. Deb said it, and I don't think that we can get any more different than that, besides the fact that this comes down to profitability. It comes down to us truly needing to understand, which again, and I know we didn't get into it today, but vaccine hesitancy, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like on one hand, you're saying, these are so safe and effective, and they're great. But then it's, just FYI, we've asked the FDA to not hold us liable should anything happen to you, and you can't come back and sue us. But yet our taxpayer dollars are paying for, these drugs, vaccines, and so it's like you look at the whole situation and the left hand does not match what the right hand is doing. And just as we saw, there's one vaccine company, and I'm not going to use brand names, but they made $33 billion in a quarter and are on track to make $27 billion alone just from the boosters. And so when you look at that kind of profitability and you say, we're making it accessible for all,
Laura just called in from Atlanta.
That make, EpiPens, that make insulin medications that are offering these same benefits when we know that there are more people that are suffering from diabetes, suffering from hypertension, or at risk for having a severe allergic reaction, okay, than what individuals even too right now may be suffering from COVID. And I know that that's not something that people want to hear, but I have to remind people that there are chronic conditions in this world, and there are 60% of Americans that have some form of a chronic condition that needs to be treated. And right now, it's just concerning that with the mandates and everything else that are going on, people are saying, like, hey, now that they've taken my health care insurance, how am I getting ready to treat these other chronic conditions? And those are going to put me worse off and make me more dependent on the health care system as being a non-insured patient, because now I can't manage my health care because I no longer have health care insurance because I'm not employed. So I think it's a lot of factors that goes into this. But just as Dr. Deb mentioned, money, unfortunately, is the top profit. And when you think about why there are trade secrets, my issue is this. My issue is the lack of transparency in exchange for profitability and safety. And that's just my issue.
Hey, Laura has called from Atlanta. Laura, I want you to ask your question, and then we're going to have to go to break because we're going to be talking about folks not being able to pay for goods and services in cash. Laura, really quickly, sweetie, what's on your mind?
You're talking to me, right?
Yeah, of course, but you got to make it real quick, and then we'll give you the answer during the break.
Okay. I did ask the question about why are some people being forced to take the vaccine, especially if they don't want to take it. I mean, I can understand that there's protocols that if you don't take it, there is a possibility of you losing your job and whatnot. And I think we spoke on this yesterday.
Well, you called in. I know you wanted to speak with them, but hold on, because I'm going to have Dr. Deborah Verholden and Dr. Knighton speak to your concern, because this is you're part of the reason that we wanted to talk about this today, vaccine hesitancy, but so much stuff is happening all the time. We wanted to also talk about the third shot versus the booster shot, and what all of that means, because there's a fair amount of vaccine confusion, and we're here. We have these brilliant doctors here with us today and every day to help us to clear these things up. Hope you got something out of this whole discussion about Halloween, because who would think that you could get COVID from a wrapper around your candy? Oh, yes, you could. Yes, you could. Coming up, we're going to be talking about being unbanked, about not being able to pay cash when you go into a business, when you want to buy some food, when you want to buy something. Who does that lock out? A lot of people. Back in just a minute. Okay, Miss Laura? Miss Laura? Laura? Laura?
She's talking.
Okay, Laura, babe, I need you to go real quickly because we gotta move on to the next segment. But I did want them to speak with you. What's on your mind, sweetie?
Oh, I was telling you yesterday, a lot of the employees here have walked off the job because they were told to either take the vaccine or get tested. Some of them refused even to get tested because of the fact that, they may infect others and whatnot. So, and then we had an issue here with MARTA. They say a lot more employees did walk off the job, especially bus drivers. And I was telling you yesterday also that I had to walk to work yesterday morning because there was no buses running in my area, and the very people who drove around my route and everything, they just simply walked off the job, and I had to walk to work. And it's putting a lot of pressure on a lot of people that this is happening, and I can understand that. I really can relate to it, but I guess if I need to keep my job, I have to get vaccinated or get tested daily. And where is the concern in that one? I understand.
Wow.
I think You know what? I was about to say, Santita, I think this is a great conversation for CK at some point to be in, because I was even looking at the OSHA laws recently, and this is coming back to her question about, being tested or being vaccinated, right? So that is a very good question, meaning like, okay, you're not testing individuals that are vaccinated, even though that we know that the vaccines are waning. So you're not testing individuals.
Attorney Patillo's on the line.
Okay. Do you have, excuse me one moment. Do you have Erica Ford?
No, not yet.
Please call her now.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
But if you're not doing proper tracing, meaning like you're not looking at where the actual origin of the person that did the infecting came from, then it is possible that if they are only testing the unvaccinated would be blamed for an outbreak, even if that means that the vaccinated are also getting sick as well. So that does, to me, bring up a liability issue. I would say the other piece of that is what type of testing are we talking about? Because if people are being asked to take a nasopharyngeal swab, meaning that has to go all the way back into their nasal cavity near their throat or up their nose, that's actually is down their throat almost, but it's still very uncomfortable because it's got to go up the nose and then around, right? If you're being asked to do that on a weekly basis, then that's a very uncomfortable test. Maybe people don't feel comfortable wanting to spit every week either. So I think it depends upon a test. The other piece is when we're talking about the test, the employer, is the employer providing the actual test, or is this a situation where they are expecting individuals to go out and pay for a test or to have a specific test? So I think that these are also factors that go into it. And when it comes to OSHA, and that's occupational safety, right?
I have 1 minute. You guys. I'm sorry.
One thing that makes me think is I actually read something yesterday where it is the requirement of the job to provide the safety materials. So they're supposed to issue, the health and safety regulations that they are mandating for employers. They're supposed to provide, appropriate materials that they want individuals to use.
Erica Ford's on the line.
Okay.
Responsible for making sure that these materials are FDA approved. So if that is the case, and you're still having individuals that are being infected, then who's liable?
Well, still the corporations are not liable. And, we're going to have, what we will do is circle back and have a conversation about this, because now we're beginning to see the sick outs. MARTA is the mass transit in Atlanta. This is happening all over the place. Now Southwest, people are not able to fly, and it's not just happening at Southwest. There is a residual effect for all of us, and we need to talk about this because people are quitting these jobs, and you can't just overnight become a fireman, a police officer, a pilot, whatever. You just can't. I'm sending you much love, doctors, for Holden and Knighton. I got to move on to the next topic. We've got Erica Ford with us and Attorney Robert Patillo. We'll give you a couple of minutes to promote this conference about 2. Then I've got to move on to Miss Ford. Miss Ford, how are you?
I'm good. Yourself, Queen?
It's wonderful hearing you. Girl, I love your hair.
Thank you, Queen.
Oh, I'm very serious. I think it is so striking. I love it. I mean, it's a halo. It's absolutely gorgeous.
It started at like 22.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I had to go back and I had to blow up the picture. I said, wait a minute, what? Oh, I'm serious. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's gorgeous. And it's so full. And I mean, it's just, how do you do anything to keep the color bright? Thank you so much, Cosme. Is there anything
Not
special
really.
you do? Oh, okay, you just got it like that. I ain't mad at you. But it's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. I promise you I will not ask you that on the air, but I just had to say it. I was like, she looks fabulous. I had to say it. Girl, I have to get my hair bleached every 6 weeks.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah, I do. Because people in my family don't gray for a long time. And I'm at the age where you've got to do something, right? To lift that color. So it's okay.
Right.
Lord, give me time. How about that? This is not a complaint, but thank you. Robert
50
Patillo, it's
seconds.
great hearing your voice. Thank you so much, Cosme. And I'm going to give you,
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm going to run through a couple of these headlines and I'm going to give this to you. And I need you to be out at 7:10. I mean, at 8:10 your time, okay? Thank you. Of course.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Determined, unstoppable, achieving the impossible. We're standing tall with our heads held high. We are victorious.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It is Tuesday, October 12th, 2021. I am so glad to be with you, coming to you from the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, WCPT 820 here in Chicago, and AM 950 radio. My brothers and sisters to the north, hi, Gary Hines and Sounds of Blackness up in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I love you, love you, love you, everybody. It's a joy to be with you today. We're going to be talking about the Trump memo that outlined how to conduct a coup. Should we have paid more attention to that? We've not been talking about that. And what about when you go into an establishment and you want to buy some food, or you want to buy some clothes, you want to make a purchase, and they say, but your cash is not welcome here. How does that work? I'm going to be talking with Erica Ford, one of the world's leading human rights activists, about this and how it disproportionately impacts Black and brown people and poor people. And we've got to do something about it. And in fact, people are working to do something about that. Let's get to some of these headlines so that we can get on through this, everybody. Santita Jackson Show, Tuesday, October 12th, 2021. Chicago, we're going to have a high of 69 degrees, partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 66 degrees will be the high, partly cloudy. The Dow closed down 250 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed down 93 points, and the S&P 500 closed down 30. The White Sox will be playing the Astros tonight in the playoffs. Love it, love it, love it. And then the Ravens faced off against the Colts last night, and the Ravens were triumphant. 31-25, everybody. What's happening with Southwest? More than 800 flights canceled on Saturday. More than 1,000 flights canceled on Sunday. And more disruptions, everybody. Monday's cancellations amounted to 10% of their schedule. At least 1,400 other flights, roughly 40% were delayed, and the shares in their stock fell more than 4%. What do you think about that, everybody? The Southwest president says nothing nefarious is behind the cancellations. He's saying that, we're looking at travel cuts for the holidays and all of that. But the other side is that the pilots union have steadfastly denied that their workers have walked off the job to protest the federal mandate, but they are suing their airline to stop the mandate. And they are tying up travel all over the country. Wow, this is the nation's largest low-cost carrier. What do you think about that? What about the NFL coach who has resigned over these racist emails from 2011? Las Vegas Raiders head coach John Gruden has resigned over reports that he used homophobic, racist, and misogynistic language in emails while he worked as an analyst at ESPN. Now, why is that noteworthy? Well, 70% of the league is Black, and about 30 to 40% of their fan base, female. So there's a whole lot going on here. And he was in the middle of a 10-year, $100 million contract. Ooh, let me see the rest of my time too. Attorney Robert Patillo, we love him so much here. Of course, he hosts his own show on WAOK, the iconic radio station down in Atlanta. But he is also the Southeastern Regional Director of Rainbow Push, and they're having a Creating Opportunity Conference that is free and virtual. Robert Patillo, how can we be involved, and when does it begin?
Thank you so much, Santita. We are in the final countdown. The conference starts at 9:30 a.m. on October the 14th and goes until 7 p.m. on October the 15th Eastern Standard Time. People can register for the conference 100% free, 100% virtual at creatingopportunityconference.com. This year we're going to be highlighting Reverend Jackson's 80th birthday and his 65 years of service to the community. We ask people to join Rainbow Push Coalition, rainbowpush.org. We're going to have everything from international sessions, black farmers, youth entrepreneurship, women in leadership. The entire schedule is at creatingopportunityconference.com. And again, they can register for free today. We really do encourage people to turn out. We'll have great information on exactly how you can get involved in many federal programs and also connect with other business owners around the country to create opportunities and create business opportunities for yourself and your business.
Well, we want to thank you so much for being with us today, and you'll be with us tomorrow because we want everyone to get involved in that conference. Please go to rainbowpush.org. Go on and get registered. It's free. It's free. It's free. Well, it's not free for us because we really do need your membership so that we can pay to get this up. But you know what? Reverend Jackson does not want this to cost you anything because he wants you to get the information. The Rainbow Push Atlanta Creating Opportunity Conference. Everybody, please go and get registered so that you can find out where the opportunities are. You know what? Let's talk with this human rights activist. The more I found out about her, the more impressed I am. And so happy that someone like her is occupying this earth. We're occupying the same space in this together because we need people who fight for the least of these. Indeed, she's the peace doctor. The peace doctor, blessings be upon her, CEO and founder of Life Camp. She has decided to find the people who need the most help and bring them into our society so that they can be productive. She's also with Actify New York. But what is she doing? Have you ever been to the store and you making your purchase, or at least you're trying to, and they say, oh no, we don't accept cash. So that means that you need to be banked because you need to have a debit card. Because if you buy the debit card from, say, the dime store, if you will, I don't want to mention any names, they might not accept those, right? So if you're not in the system, you increasingly cannot spend money. You can't make purchases. You cannot get goods and services. Who does that disproportionately impact? Well, Erica Ford, you got to help me with this one because more and more and more, if you do not charge it, you cannot buy it. How is that impacting us?
It will impact us a lot. Good morning, Queen. How are you today?
Oh, my queen! If you would just see this woman, she is a queen, and but more than that, you behave like a queen. And thank you for lifting us all up. What is going on?
5 million Americans who lack a bank account or a credit card and need to use cash as a necessity. So if we move to such a system, you leave out millions of people. You know, the disadvantaged community is impacted the most. And so we can't allow something to happen like this unless there is a system to make sure that the equity is there. And you can't even do it because if you look at the systems crashing, you look at a hurricane, a natural disaster, you have to use cash because the systems are not going to work. And so this thought needs to be rethought.
Well, it seems that, this is, the situation has become so dire. At least Congressman Donald Payne is trying to do something about this. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
And so talk to me about what he is doing because more and more people you're getting locked in. You can't go to some of these grocery stores. I mean, there's so many places, more and more places, Erica Ford, that are refusing to accept your cash. How does that work? And what is Congressman Payne doing about this?
Donald Payne introduced a bill in July to protect Americans. He presently has 28 co-sponsors. The bill is the Payment Choice Act. It would make it illegal for retail businesses to reject cash for in-person consumers transactions at stores across the country. And so, we're looking for the rest of the Congress and Senate to push and pass this bill because there's, too many people who will be directly impacted. You have tip workers who, there's
4.3 million tip workers who only make $2.13 an hour. And so they need their tips. It's not like, people walk around and give credit card tips that much to these folks. You have people who, for their own personal reasons, just don't have debit cards or credit cards. So the problem doesn't get solved because businesses don't, the process isn't faster, the process isn't more lenient on the business, so it's a double impact. Like I said before, if the system goes down, your whole business is shut down, and plus it's more marginalized people who don't have access to equity, and so we talk about economic justice. There's millions of Americans who cannot afford them. Cashless policies are not merely a matter of choice, but necessity of equal justice. Lawmakers must take the basic protection now before more businesses across the country go cashless. And this policy has to be implemented. We can't do a cashless economy. It's not an inclusive economy. It creates a two-tiered unequal system between the banks and the unbanked, and we see that now.
Well, we're talking with the peace doctor, Erica Ford. She is the CEO and founder of Life Camp, and she's talking to us about the Cashless Society, because it seems like we're here. But, when it seems increasingly, when you present cash at an establishment that does accept it, Erica Ford, you're viewed with suspicion.
I'm a store. The most of the people who I work with, fully incarcerated men and women who come home, they don't have the ability right away to have access to banking. And so you're talking about those folks not having access to their basic necessities. You have a lot of folks who are immigrants and don't have immediate access to banking. You have people, as we stated before, in low English, 55 million Americans, point and blank. So the Payment Choice Act is something that we need to see to come into reality. Donald Payne is doing a good job in introducing this bill, and we hope that it goes past.
Who is winning with these digital payments? Because, Congressman Payne said, there are too many stores, too many businesses that want to reject American cash. I mean, Erica Ford, it's cash, legal tender. That's what you're supposed to deposit in your bank in order to use your card. What is the pushback against cash? I mean, and who's making money off of these digital purchases? It seems like there's another economy up under this here. You know what I mean? Somebody's making some money here.
I definitely agree with you, and the creation of all of this digital economy is definitely something that we saw moving fast in 2020, and hopefully we can slow it down so that it doesn't continue to marginalize and erase a whole group of people from the system.
When you say it marginalizes and erases people from a system, in practical terms, what does that mean?
That means that people won't have access. Black and brown people, poor working people won't have access to their basic necessities in their communities. And won't even have access, some to have certain businesses, because some people can't afford a cashless business. Some people need to have a business where they take cash. And so we have to relook at, or continue to look sharper at what is happening in society and how we can continue to stay conscious and active and engaged. Because when we talk about pieces of lifestyle, it's not just about putting a gun down. It's economic wealth. It's equity in our community. It's having the ability to have access to the resources that you need. And all of this goes hand in hand. It's not an accident.
Well, what do you say to some people, say in restaurants, who feel that handling cash is not clean? We just had an infection preventionist on with us, and we were talking about how to deal with Halloween. Now, an infection preventionist is its own is a very particular a very particular profession. Dr. Shanina Knighton is a registered nurse. She's a research scholar, and she has a PhD, and she's one of 5,000 infection preventionists, Erica Ford, in the United States. There are only 5,000. There are 331 million of us. And what she does is help you to prevent infections. She said, look, COVID can live on the candy wrapper for several days. I said, wow. As we're going into Halloween, that's a big issue. So when you have baristas and people who handle cash in businesses who say they don't want to handle cash because COVID might be on it, I'm like, the COVID can be, it can live on plastic, which is also your card. So I'm just trying to figure out the justification for the rejection of legal tender in the United States and all around the world. It's just, let me go to Attorney Rodriguez. She has a question for you. Attorney Rodriguez?
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It seems like society is always placing restrictions on people. And it's unfortunate for there's a group of people that they have to be credit worthy in order to get a bank account. They have to have a permanent home, address, job, et cetera, et cetera. But then you're put in a situation you can't even use cash to pay. I kind of experienced something, but in the reverse, when my wallet was stolen, so I didn't have none of my credit cards, none of my debit cards, nothing. So I'm trying to buy things, and I realized I couldn't buy anything. I didn't have a credit card. I didn't have a debit card. I had to run to the bank, but it was the holiday. So I was stuck, so I can imagine what it must feel like for individuals that are in a rock between a rock and a hard place, and they do need protection. It's like these restrictions are placed on people who need protection the most. So what can we do to help?
Well, one is calling elected officials and asking them to pass the Payment Choice Act. That is something very important. This bill needs to be passed. It needs more. It has 28 co-sponsors right now. Everybody should support it and pass it so that this doesn't become into law. And then, do stories like this, help bring attention to the issue, and really, but the most important thing is getting the bill passed. Call Donald Payne, ask how it can support, but call your elected official, folks, and ask your elected official, do they know about the Payment Choice Act? Do they know that they're trying to make society cashless? Do they know that they're taking away your ability to get access to your basic necessities? Do they know that millions of workers will be, suffering from jobs, suffering from the ability to move freely, then having a whole data, because when you're using credit cards and so on, it's also data tracking, right? Like they have all your data. And so, the recent data breaches in the United States and worldwide reveals private information on a million customers get sold, So this is also a concern when everything is digital, right? So that's a $200 billion industry, data collection. So if that's a $200 billion industry, then what do you think? Do they want you to go cashless, or do they want you to go stay with your money and not come into their $200 billion industry, right? And so it's important to keep the conversation going. It's important to push back. It's important to make sure that, every elected official supports their constituents. In every neighborhood, there's constituents who need this. Well, everyone doesn't have a thing.
That's right. And they're bending, and they're really trying to make it very difficult for you to make any cash. I mean, think about your hairdresser and all kinds of people who have businesses where they are paid in cash. Now, the Biden administration wants to track every transaction beyond $600 in your bank account. It's like, wait a minute, you already got my W-2 form, so what? You know how much money I'm making. I mean, but you're squeezing me, but you're not looking at Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and all these other people. Let me go to Ken from Lombard. Ken, very quickly, we only have Ms. Ford for a couple more minutes. Ken?
Yes, hi.
Hey.
Yes, hello. I'm glad to hear this subject talked about. I have a retail business for 30 years. I have discouraged my customers from using credit cards because it costs about 3%. I have to pay. Business has to pay in order to take a credit card payment. And of course, that gets passed on to the customer. So I actually will rebate my customers the 3% if they don't use a credit card, because I have to either give it to them or give it to the credit card company. I'd rather give it to my customer.
Ken, what is your business, honey?
I sell musical instruments and repair them.
What is the name of it?
Kenneth Stein Violins.
Everyone go to Kenneth Stein Violins. You're in Lombard? I'm very serious. Where are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, Kenneth Stein Violins in Lombard. Let us support him. Yes,
I just
Ken?
wanted to say that, 30 years ago or so, when I started doing this, that was when the banks were starting to charge $1.75 or something to use their ATM, various fees, and people were up in arms. And at the same time, they just docilely rolled over and allowed the banks to skim 3% off our entire economy.
Absolutely. Stay right there, Ken. The final 2 minutes belong to you, Erica Ford. We want people to support the Payment Choice Act. You can call your congressperson. You can call Congressman Donald Payne out of New Jersey, but call your congressman and let him know. Now 90 seconds belong to you, Erica Ford.
Well, and while you're calling your congressman about the cashless payment act, also ask them about the reconciliation bill, because we need the $5 billion in the reconciliation bill to go to the ground to help community violence intervention groups across America help address this rapid rage of violence that has taken over our communities in urban and Black communities across America. So let's join together to not only stop the cashless bill coming into thing, but to also help end gun violence in America.
Well, will you come back to the show?
Definitely.
Okay, I want you to come back, my dear sister, because I think that you've got so much to say, and we want to help you with your work, because as we help you, we're helping ourselves. We want to thank you for all that you're doing. The Peace Doctor, everybody, Erica Ford. Oh, no, God bless you. CEO and founder of Life Camp. And she's also a fashionista. If you see her on LinkedIn, you'll know what I'm talking about. Had to say it. Blessings to you, Erica Ford. Everybody, please let us get involved. We don't want a cashless society. That is not good for anybody. And as they say, that the price tag on a cashless society is racism. And who's making the money? The banks. Everybody but you. And Kenneth Stein, violins up in Lombard. Everybody go support him. He is trying to help you help yourself. He said, no, I don't want to give the money to the banks. I want to give the money back to you. Thank you. We need more people to stand up just like you, everybody. The Payment Choice Act. Call your congressperson at 202-224-3121. 202-224-3121. Tell them that you want them to support this act, everybody. We've got John Nichols talking about this coup. Bill Maher's been in trouble, or at least he stirred up some controversy talking about President Trump. He says, look, he's on his way back, everybody. It's a slow-moving coup. We saw the memo. They described what they were going to do. Have we really paid attention? Let's talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show. Back in just a minute. Erica Ford?
She hung up.
Okay. Definitely want to have her
So it's just
back.
Robert Patillo now on the line.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, no. Attorney Patillo's gone.
No, he's still on the
Oh,
line.
he's still, I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
Attorney
he's still here.
Patillo? Oh, my goodness. I'm sorry, Attorney Patillo.
Oh, hey, I'm still here. I was just brushing my teeth listening to the show.
Well, you know what? I guess I want to promote this as much as I can.
Okay, well, I'm here.
Okay, well, definitely, because I want you to. Can you come back on tomorrow?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Okay, fantastic. I think I might bring you on a little earlier because I want to talk about the NBA vaccine mandates. I think I'm going to have Atan Thomas on before I have CK, and I'd love for you to join him.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay? All right, sweetie, give my love to your wife.
Mr. Nichols is on the line.
Okay? Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Mr. Nichols is on.
Okay, how you doing, John?
I am very well. How are you?
Doing great.
Oh, good, good.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to respond to this.
Don't worry.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive.
I don't know about you, but when I'm really tired, when I work a lot, I get a little edgy. I don't want my police officers being a little edgy and being exhausted and having their patience run dry. If there was ever a profession that needed patience, it was being a cop.
Joan Esposito, weekday afternoons 2 to 5 on WCPT 820.
Introducing the latest innovation in water technology. The new Nebbia by Moen Quattro Shower Head offers 4 unique experiences to choose from, designed to soothe, clarify, relieve, and cleanse.
Okay, all right, John. Okay, here we are. Okay, let me get right down to it, as they say. All right. Whew. Trying to, of course, you remember Mark Weiner.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, well, he passed away. His son is getting married. Richard is getting married on Saturday. Just trying to figure out if the planes are going to be running, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that is, they're having.
Where are you headed?
Providence.
Where do you have to go?
Providence. Getting up there south. That's southwest.
30 seconds.
Well, you can go to Boston, and then it's easy Boston to Providence too if there's a problem.
Look, I've done that a lot. The problem is they're not talking about this, but they're having delays all over the airline industry.
Oh, I know. Oh, without a doubt. It's something. I think it's a staffing issue.
No, the pilots are pushing back on vaccine mandates. Yeah.
Yeah.
5 seconds.
Well, that won't last for long.
I don't know. 'Cause they've got everybody tied up in a knot. We'll see.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Determined, unstoppable, achieving the impossible. We're standing tall with our heads held high. We are victorious.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. You know what time it is on Tuesday, 7:33 Central Standard Time. At the bottom of the hour, we bring on the Nation magazine's national correspondent, John Nichols. It's his time to be on the show. We're so glad to have him with us. Of course, his latest book is The Fight for the Soul of the Democratic Party. We urge you to get that book. And we're talking about this slow-moving coup that Bill Maher was talking about. Boy, oh boy, people said, what is going on with Bill Maher? He's not a liberal anymore. Well, he's kind of like a libertarian, which is fine with me, as long as you're standing in truth. And he just said, look, you guys, I don't think you're really paying attention to Donald Trump and who he is and what he's doing. You guys, he is not someone who went away. He's someone who went out to sea, and he is gathering strength just like a hurricane, everybody. So what do you think about that? I mean, he laid out a scary, some people would even say that it was an undemocratic scenario of what is happening. And he was doing it maybe to rouse us from our slumber. He said, I've been saying it ever since he lost. He's like a shark that's not gone. He's just gone out to sea, but actually he's been quietly eating people this whole time. And he really referenced the Game of Thrones. I don't know how many of you who watch that or who understand Machiavelli or just understand power. And he has been eliminating people from the Republican Party who could be obstacles to him. I mean, if you just look at what he's been doing, Bill Maher has done something that I've not heard pundits do or newsreaders and journalists do on television. He has gone right to the heart of the matter. And maybe we should be talking more about this memo, this Trump memo that described the coup that they were going to lead. And you keep saying that this Trump coup attempt, in your latest piece in The Nation, you said this Trump coup attempt is far from finished. You believe that he's preparing for a run in 2024. Talk to us, John Nichols. What are we looking at? It seems that Bill Maher, who is a comedian, is making just a little bit more sense than everybody else. Maybe he's seeing something that other people are refusing to see. Help me.
Well, I think some of us are quite willing to see it, although we're frightened by it, and should be. And look, I'll take us back a step and remind folks, as somebody who had the honor of being able to cover the transition from apartheid to freedom in South Africa, that in the last days of apartheid in the 1980s, late 1980s, in South Africa, the apartheid government, the racist government, really clamped down on communications. And so South African television was very, very difficult to get accurate information from. And the only place where you could really get a sense of what was going on was in the comedy shows.
Yeah.
And there were some comedians who would parody the Afrikaners, parody some of the most racist folks. And in their parody, they would communicate subtle realities of what was going on. The very stark reality that the people who were governing South Africa were dangerous people who were doing dangerous and awful things, but also that they were vulnerable, that a transition was likely to come. And so I remember being in South Africa at that time and having folks say to me, yeah, if you wanted to know what was going on, you turned on the comedy shows. And then the next day you talked to everybody about what had been said and you parsed it. We're not quite that bad in America. I wouldn't suggest that we're in anywhere similar situation. And yet we should still recognize that it's often the comedians who give us the information in the starkest terms. And you look back at Jon Stewart talking about the Iraq War. You look at John Oliver on a regular basis talking about all sorts of scandals and controversies. You look at Liz Winstead, the great comedian, talking about women's rights and so many assaults on them, especially as regards the right to choose. And you look at, I think, what Bill Maher did the other night. And I've been writing about this for a while, so I was obviously very sympathetic to what he said. I don't think there's any question Donald Trump is running in 2024. I mean, it's almost as if we have to suspend disbelief in order to question it. Because where did he go on Saturday? To Iowa, the first caucus state. What did he do there? He appeared before a huge crowd. Who did he effectively force to come on stage and endorse him and accept his endorsement? Chuck Grassley, the senior Republican member of the Senate. I mean, how hard is it to get a clear picture of what's going on here? Donald Trump is preparing to run for president in 2024. He has taken full control of the Republican Party. He will be the Republican nominee if indeed he runs, and I think he will. And even if he loses on the day after the election in 2024, he will declare victory. He will say, oh, we won. They tried to steal it from us, but we won. And his supporters in the state will far more aggressively seek to overturn election results they don't like than they did in 2020. And so everything you saw in 2020 repeats, but perhaps with a Republican Party that doesn't have the folks like he had in Georgia and Arizona and some other states who said, hold, I'm not going to go as far as you say we should, Mr. President, to Trump back in 2020. And so I think we're in a dangerous scenario here. I think we have to recognize that reality, not deny it, but take the necessary steps to prepare for it.
We'll do a little time travel. What would that look like? I mean, because no one could have imagined January 6th. Although one of my frequent guests, a member of the family here, Dwight McKee, said, this is about sedition. They are going to work to overturn this election, and it could get violent. A year and a half ago, it sounded crazy. People were like, oh, come on, this is a little bit over the top. Well, guess what? January 6th was in our faces, and it was like, oh my gosh. It was stunning. Although I think our elders were, a little less surprised. Certainly, I know, even though my parents might have been surprised, they were not shocked. But they grew up in the Jim Crow South, so they have a different kind of view of where things can go in the United States. I want to know, would that look like? What would it look like for him to run for president again? What would it look like for him to stand on stage on the night of the election, if he does lose, and say, I won? What would, just take us through that?
Sure. I'd be glad to. Well, not glad to, but willing to.
Well, thank you.
First off, let me remind you that there's a lot of people who've been very wise in perceiving things. If we go all the way back to Dave Chappelle, I think, and Chris Rock, after the 2020
We're going to the
election.
comedians today, John. What?
We are, but remember when they were on Saturday Night Live?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And they were at a party with white folks, and the white folks were going, I can't believe anybody voted for Donald Trump. And Chris Rock came in and said, what are these people so down about? And he said, yeah, they're all surprised that people voted for Donald Trump. And the two black guys laughed because they said, really? You should be aware that,
that the majority of you did. Get out of here. 2/3 of his voters made $50,000 a year or more. Most white people voted for Donald Trump. I'm not mad at you. Just say it. Stop.
No, that's exactly right. And so this is why I think that we have folks who see clearly, but aren't always understood or aren't always taken in until it's too late. I wrote a piece in October of 2020, which had a timeline for after the election, and it focused on January 6th, 2 months before, saying, that's the day which is going to be the pivot point, and it's the one we have to be conscious of. And so I think that sometimes we can look ahead and recognize what's at stake. So if we look to 2024, here's the bare bones reality. Number one, if Donald Trump wants to run, he will tease about it for a time, but as long as he teases about it, nobody else who's serious will get in the race because nobody wants to be the target of Donald Trump and his supporters. If you go back to 2016, you saw what happened to the Republicans who got in his way. He shredded them. He Marco Rubio and Chris Christie and Scott Walker
Bush.
and all, put them all aside, right? So nobody's going to want to get in his way. And if indeed he makes his choice to run, I assume he wouldn't formally announce until after the 2022 elections, but relatively quickly there, and then he hits the road, and he's a constant presence, grabbing hold of the news cycles, getting immense amounts of attention, pushing aside other Republicans. Yeah, somebody will try to challenge him, but that won't work. Look, they're not standing up to him now, even on these absurd audits in the states. And so he becomes the Republican nominee. There's very little question of that. I don't think the United States will vote for him for president, that a majority of people will. I don't think there will be third candidates that will draw votes off as in 2016. And so the likelihood is that whoever the Democratic nominee is, whether it's Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or someone else, that they probably win. But that Donald Trump then says, oh, there was election fraud every place where he didn't win. Now, what's different, unless we intervene, what's different is that the Republican election officials in the states, perhaps even a few more Republican governors, because 2022 could be a year where Republicans win some governorships, instead of standing in his way or at least obstructing his most extreme actions, they facilitate them. They actually, they're bought into this concept, and potentially they send electors to the Electoral College, multiple slates, a slate that is, the slate that actually is trying to express the results of the election with a slate appointed by a state legislature. Remember, there's no rule for how electors are chosen. They don't have to be reflective of the results of the election. They can be chosen and named by the state legislature and sent in, at least from many states. You get to Washington, if Republicans are in control of the House and the Senate, again, this all depends on 2022, everything's up for grabs. Then you have to rely on the decency of so-called responsible Republicans, and imagine that there might be enough to side with Democrats and accept the proper electors, reject the improper electors. It's basically what happened on January 6th in the evening. But you just don't have the assurances of that. And I think that because of the lack of assurance, we should be looking very seriously at taking steps at the state and the federal level that make sure that the 2024 election is not gamed, that it is not manipulated, that it is not assaulted in the way that I think Donald Trump would assault it.
Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. You can text me at that number as well. I want to hear your voices. I want to hear your thoughts. I mean, because Donald Trump is all over it, everybody. He was just in Iowa. John Nichols, he had a huge crowd, and he's had a presence in the news every day. It's like he never went away. Linear Bob says the Republican legislatures will throw out the election results and appoint Republican delegates to the Electoral College to cast their votes for Trump, regardless of the popular vote. That's very possible. Joan says, I don't believe the twice impeached ex-president, she put that in quotation marks, will be a candidate in 2024. This is simply a never-ending grift, emptying the pockets of the cult. I hear you, Joan, but I think, John, you have a point. I think, you said, wait a minute, this coup, you're calling it a coup, first of all. It's a coup attempt. Why are you calling it a coup attempt? Why is Bill Maher calling this a slow-moving coup? Why a coup?
Yeah, I think that's the word we should use, and I think you should be very comfortable using it. Look, one of the, I think, standards that a lot of people apply is an assumption that if you attempt a coup and you don't succeed, it's not a coup. Wrong. A coup is the effort to, ascend, or a putsch, however you want to describe it, is an effort to overturn a democratically elected government, in this case, to overturn the results that would seat a democratically elected government. That attempt, I don't think there's any doubt, was made. And I'm not the person casually saying this. If you look at the new report that the Senate Judiciary Committee put out just last week, it included 9 instances of calls and meetings where then President Trump, pressured the Department of Justice to effectively say that the election was fraudulent. And they pushed back. Members of the Department of Justice even threatened to quit. And at that point, President Trump said, well, just say it was fraudulent. You don't have to act on anything. But if you say it, then my people will take care of things from there. So there's very little doubt at this point that what President Trump was doing was trying to get as many, quote unquote, official signals as he could to justify this mass of people coming to Washington and putting tremendous pressure on the Congress not to accept the results, particularly putting pressure on Vice President Pence and Republican members of Congress. We now know that Vice President Pence, far from being this very noble guy, consulted with Dan Quayle about whether he could reject results. And so he at least explored the possibility. And so we got very, very close to a situation that would have been a full-on constitutional crisis. There's no doubt of that. And we had violence at our Capitol that left a number of people dead. And so I think we have to accept that there was a coup attempt, and legal scholars, former U.S. attorneys and others who've looked at this describe it as such. So this is not the casual work just of comedians or of journalists or of radio talk show folks. Legal scholars are using the term. and constitutional scholars are using the term. And I don't think that history would allow us to neglect the reality that someone who attempts to use their position to retain power that is illicit, that does not belong to them, would not in the future seek to obtain power in illicit and wrongful ways. I think it's logical that Donald Trump will attempt to run for the presidency again, and will, if he loses, claim fraud and attempt to achieve his goal through whatever means is possible.
What's at stake if he wins?
So I think, remember, there's this former NSA specialist who has written a book. She did a number of shows last week talking about, her book and things like that. And what she said was very blunt. She said, if he wins, that's the end of democracy.
I think that Americans...
I don't think it has to come to that, but I do think we have to be conscious that that's what we're talking about.
Well, I think we have to be conscious of this, and that's why I think that, Bill Maher's words last week were like cold water in our faces, because I think that, we always think that it can't happen here. Your book, The Fight for the Soul of the Democratic Party, shows that, that the struggle is ongoing to to maintain the republic, to increase democracy. This is it is an ongoing struggle. It is not something that you need to take for granted, John Nichols. And I think that in America, we look over our shoulders and look over our noses at other countries and say, what a pity. But, we just assume that it would never happen here. Should we?
I think we should never make that assumption. And look, I will tell you this. Sometimes it's people from other countries who love this country, who come here, who have a better perspective. And the woman I was talking about a moment ago, Fiona Hill, I've got her quote here, and I'll read it. It's very quick. She was talking about her new book, and she said, "This is also part of the myth making, as we're well aware, the perpetration of the big lie and the turning of the people of January 6th into martyrs, and also trying to rewrite the historical record in real time. Trump is mulling, again, a return to what he sees more as a crown in the presidency in 2024. I feel we're at a really critical and very dangerous inflection point in our society. If Trump runs, and she said, if indeed he makes that run, and if he claims the election is rigged and does all the things that he has done and achieves the presidency, then again, using her, democracy is done."
Let me go to Anita from North Carolina. Anita, what's on your mind? Anita?
Hello?
Yes, sweetie. What's on your mind?
Oh, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to blame the American public for this, because I watched Bill Clinton and all the people that your dad endorsed over the years, and every time they get in, people don't take seriously. They still have to participate in their government. They have to do all the things that the older Americans were doing, financing war, sending people to school, having big families, things like this. And the younger generation, my generation, early 60s, and then the people that's maybe 1 to 70, a lot of them didn't take that seriously, that they had to make decisions and finance things. They thought the older people were going to continue to just make sure they could just go and get everything pushed button. I go to school, I get this, I get that, I work a job. Well, decisions aren't made, like that. People have to come up with solutions to things as problems come up, and advancement makes its way in for you to take care of. Your father did that. The new Americans don't do that. So they open it up because they use religion, and nobody's listening to religion when it's not being used logically. So they go to whatever they can get to that can make money and is logical enough, or maybe they can afford a place to stay, okay? And that's what Donald Trump is presenting to people. Maybe he can show me how to have a place to live without depending on welfare or talking about religion. And the American public is allowing this to happen because they're not listening to your fathers, telling them to be responsible about their democracy. They have to maintain and uphold. They refuse to do it.
Well, you know what? Let me,
them to vote.
Anita, stay right there. I want to give these final couple of minutes to John. I want you to speak. I want you to speak to her because indeed, Daniel Perez is saying that the real sad thing is the corporate Democrats and leadership are doing nothing to stop this from happening. I don't think they're pushing back hard enough, and we're not looking at this oligarchy who support President Trump. There are a lot of things going on here. What's our takeaway? 2 minutes. They belong to you.
Well, I'm honored for the calls and the notes from people. Look, our takeaway is very, very simple. It goes right to what some of your callers and senators have suggested. The Democrats, people in power, they need to take this all much more seriously. There are steps that they can take. The first step is to govern effectively and to govern strongly, to do big, bold things. Remember, there were people who wanted to get rid of Franklin Roosevelt back in the 1930s, but he did so much with the New Deal for all of his flaws. Similarly, Lyndon Johnson in the 1960s, but you couldn't get rid of them. They both won landslide elections. And so doing big things, doing the Build Back Better agenda, that matters. Doing all the work of governing in the most effective ways. Telling Joe Manchin, Kirsten Sinema, look, you're obstructing this. These issues are much bigger than your petty politics. Along with that, getting rid of the filibuster, passing the For the People Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. These are big, big steps that can be taken to make sure that messing with the election is less possible. There's a proposal in Congress to make sure that electors follow the votes of their states, that the popular will is reflected in electoral votes. That is a very, very good step. And finally, we should be conscious of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, Section 3, which was written after the Civil War to address former Confederates, but does not talk about the Confederacy. It simply says those who have engaged in insurrection or given aid and comfort to insurrection are barred from holding public office. So a public officer who abuses his or her position in order to support an insurrection cannot hold that office again. If the Congress and secretaries of state across the country were to affirm that reality as regards Donald Trump, they could, and I write about that in my article today, they could take a major step toward making sure that Donald Trump cannot, again, abuse his position.
And they've got to dig in, everybody. You've got to look at the corporate Democrats, the corporatists on both sides. The corporatists, there is no side. They just have a cultural home. The corporatists and the Democratic and Republican Party, you must call them out. You have to look at the oligarchs who support President Trump and who support corporatism, period. Whoever represents it. You must look at all of these people and you must look at all of their positions and start putting them on Front Street. Whom do you stand for? Do you stand for the people or for your increasingly large piece of the pie? Lady Norma, we're going to come to you as soon as we get off the air. But everyone, I want you to stay with me on YouTube on the Santita Jackson Show. Thank you so much for joining us over there and liking and subscribing. Please continue to do that. And please, if you're on my Facebook page, like and share, like and share. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow morning. I love you so much, Morning Stars. John Nichols is going to hang out and answer this question, but she did hang up. Oh, I'm so sorry, Lady Norma. We were going to get to you. But you know what? Next time. See you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Love you so much, John Nichols. Everybody, the fight for the soul of the Democratic Party. Get the book. Get the book. We're in that fight for the soul of the Democratic Party, indeed for the soul of our nation and our civilization. I love you. See you tomorrow. Thank you, John Nichols. I mean, we needed that today. And we're gonna need to have more of those conversations, quite frankly.
I think we do, and I think, as we were saying at the end there's a lot of things that can be done. There are steps that can be taken to make sure that this does not develop into, the crisis that Omar hinted at, that other people have talked about. And the thing of it is it does get to what some of the callers were saying there. People have to take this stuff seriously. Yeah. They have to recognize these realities. And I'll give you an example. I mentioned the 14th Amendment, Section 3, passed after the Civil War to make sure that former Confederates did not return to positions of power. Mm-hmm. It wasn't implemented, it wasn't taken as seriously as it needed to be. A handful were, barred from holding positions, but by and large, they came back to power. That was where you saw the end of Reconstruction, the rise of the segregationists once more, the rise of Jim Crow, the presence of the Ku Klux Klan, the return of the worst of it, not slavery, but of sharecropping in ways that effectively disempowered the great mass of people. And so you have to understand that we have these constitutional protections, we have these safeguards, but they're not always used. And it's because our political elites don't take them seriously, and maybe in some cases because they don't want to take the risk of taking a strong stand on behalf of democracy. But I'll tell you that if you did see Democrats stepping up on this, you would also see a handful of responsible Republicans doing so as well. Because responsible Republicans aren't going to stand up if they think that they're the only ones going against Trump. If they think there is a clear way to make sure that Trump doesn't return, then I think you'll start to see a handful. I'm not naive about this, but a handful of responsible Republicans step up. And because there is the possibility of having a bipartisan vote to say that Trump has violated, the 14th Amendment, Section 3, he is in fact disqualified from seeking the presidency again. I think you would get a bipartisan majority for that. And there are constitutional scholars who said that's the route that should have been followed rather than an impeachment route. I happen to be very sympathetic to the impeachment route, so I'm not going to criticize that. But what I will tell you is that if we believe that the coup is ongoing, right, that Trump is still, looking for some way to return to power, and I think anybody who's followed him knows that that is likely, then it is appropriate that we should be looking at avenues to prevent him from doing so.
I'm thinking that Democrats also must, because I have to tell you, as you were saying that, I'm having to think about that only because I think that, let the market, this is what I will say, let the market do, as Ray Charles would say, to paraphrase him, let it do what it do. But I think Democrats have to register people to vote. They have to get the Justice and Policing Act passed. They have to get the For the People Act passed. They have to make good on the promises that they made in 2020. They have to do that. They have to excite their people and register some more. That's what they have to do. Reverend Jackson did not get 2.5 million, 3.5 million the first time he ran, 3.5 million Democrats. He registered 2.5 million people and brought them to the party. This is what has to happen here. And I think that we have to remember those lessons that you and I learned 40 years ago. That's what has to happen. Also.
No, I totally agree.
Also, because let me tell you something. I am not having these political fights with anybody. I'm not going to do it. But I think that, my father has often said, you can't wait for these people to invite you to their party. No, you got to throw your own. That's what we've got to do. We got to do it. We got to do it. But Americans are going to have to stop thinking that these things cannot happen here. We got to grow up in our politics. Because we keep thinking this can't happen here. We keep thinking that. And that is crazy. Slavery happened here, you guys. Slavery happened here. The indigenous people were genocided here. Here. We can do all kinds of horrible things here. And then we freed slaves. Yeah, and we participated in our own freedom. Absolutely. We still have to make it right with the indigenous people. We still have to make it right with African Americans. Women have only had the right to vote 101 years. That's it. This project is more than 500 years old. Anything can happen anywhere at any time. John, we're going to have to really wake up to that.
Yeah, and I affirm everything you're saying there. And you see, I think you're circling back to the core of this reality. If we know that very bad things can happen here, right, then we have to look back and we have to recognize that the way to stop bad things from happening is to take real action, right? Reconstruction at its best, with real action. The United States government sought to take a region of this country and make sure that democracy was possible there. And the Constitution was amended. Big things happened. And so in the past, there was a recognition that you had to do big things. The tragedy was that then our elites, our powerful, backed away from those big things. They did not fully implement. They didn't act as they should have. I read about it in my book going into the more modern era, when Henry Wallace said, coming out of World War II, we have to address racism. We have to address segregation. We have to take the steps that are necessary now. We can't wait 10 years or 20 years. Wallace was forced out as vice president, and we ended up waiting 20 years. And thankfully, Dr. King, Philip Randolph, and others forced progress. Lyndon Johnson accepted that progress and embraced it. And we had a major step forward, but still not the full step forward. And so I just think that we are in a moment now where we ought to pause. And we ought to recognize it's an all-hands-on-deck moment. We don't reject any response. We embrace every response. And so, first and foremost, yes, govern in a big enough, bold enough, and popular enough way that you isolate and marginalize Donald Trump. That the great mass of Americans say, no, I like what Joe Biden is doing. I like what the Democrats are doing. That's an important step. But also, don't reject the official steps that can be taken to disqualify those who have indeed made it clear that they will seek to overturn fair and honest elections in this country.
And Joe Biden's got to help himself. He can't come to Chicago and sell patent and sell vaccines when he needs to be in West Virginia and Arizona. Right. I mean, it's like, wait a minute, you guys. We need you in West Virginia and Arizona, and you need to send Bernie out there, and you need to send Jamila Priapal and Maxine Waters and President Obama. And President Obama, since he's the most popular guy in the party, see, like, because you're too young to retire. Too much is at stake. If he does not step up to the plate, these people are going to shred his legacy. And that, I can't even wrap my mind around that. I just can't.
Yeah.
But you have got to get out here and hit it. And you must hit it all the time. These people are not playing. Donald Trump he pulled the Jesse Jackson. This man never stopped running. He never stopped. He never stopped.
Well, please don't compare those two.
No. What I'm saying, no. Don't misunderstand. But what I am saying is, you know what? Because I think because he's a scrapper. He came from Queens, trying to get into Manhattan socially. That you all don't have no idea what a gargantuan leap it is, and he was still a joke socially in New York. But he became the Donald. So there it is. That having been said, my point is, you cannot stop. You must work without ceasing. For us to take back the Senate in 1986 at the height of the Reagan Revolution was nothing short of extraordinary. And that was all rainbow. The Democratic Party didn't do anything to make that happen. Reverend walked out of San Francisco, and you know it because you walked out of there with him. The Democratic Convention in San Francisco, after we'd been completely disrespected by the party, he ran out of there running. And didn't stop running, and pushed and pushed and pushed. And 2 years later, we had the Senate back. The Democrats did.
Well, because that's a critical thing.
Yeah.
If we can remember a little of our history in this week of honoring Reverend Jesse Jackson's 80th birthday, he didn't just run for himself.
He didn't run for himself. He said, when I win,
for everybody.
You win. Now, these other people are running for themselves. That's part of the problem. When I win, I win. No. Reverend said, when I win, you win, and more black men and women and white men, progressives and white women. Bernie Sanders was on this show, and he said, Santita, yes, Reverend Jackson opened the door for black people, but he also opened the door for white progressives and for progressives in politics. Let us be very clear on that. The reason you had a woman on the ticket was because of the Jackson factor. No top-tier candidate would agree to put a woman on the ticket in 1984. They wouldn't do it. And Mondale put Geraldine Ferraro on the ticket to undercut us as we were going in with 4 minority planks. You remember that? And then white women turn their backs on us and wouldn't support our full minority flanks. Now, I'm not bitter. We're just doing history. That's why you've got to get John's book, The Fight for the Soul of the Democratic Party, because you will see that it's a fight. We're not losing. We might take 3 steps forward and 2.5 steps back, but we're a half a step ahead. And even if we get knocked back 4 steps, we keep on pushing. But John.
Well, you're nailing it. That's exactly right, Santita. And the danger when we just did a show where we talked about some pretty dark stuff, right? Some pretty daunting prospects. A former president seeking to literally undermine and mangle the processes of democracy. That's easy to get scared about. It's also easy to think, wow, we can never move forward. The fact is, we have moved forward again and again and again. We have won tremendous battles. But in a country like this, the lesson is that when you win a battle, you don't just retire and say, well, okay, everything's done. We don't have to worry anymore. You carry on. You carry on. And the morning after the March on Washington in 1963, A. Philip Randolph, Dr. King, and all of the major organizers gathered for a breakfast. Intriguingly enough, it was put on by the Socialist Party. And remember, A. Philip Randolph was a proud socialist.
He was.
And at this breakfast, yes, and at this breakfast, what did A. Philip Randolph say? He didn't say, wow, we just had this incredible march. We even got invited up to the White House by John Kennedy to have sandwiches with the President of the United States after the march. And so we've achieved everything we wanted. No. A. Philip Randolph, the title of his speech was We Have More Marching to Do.
That's right. Because it wasn't about him.
Well, it was also not about being naive or unrealistic.
Absolutely. He understood. This is the fight. He wasn't excited about an invitation to the White House. He was like, oh, that's nice, y'all, but this is not why we're not even here for that.
I think he even understood. I think Randolph especially understood that an invitation to the White House was an effort to make you stop marching.
Absolutely.
To make you think, oh, we're welcome in the corridors of power now. We don't have to keep the pressure on. Now, I always take that lesson from A. Philip Randolph. He went to the White House in 1941, threatening to march on Washington. Roosevelt integrated the defense industry during World War II. He went to the White House in 1948, threatening to march on Washington. Truman integrated the military. He went to the White House in 1956, 1957, asking for the first Civil Rights Act. Eisenhower supported the first Civil Rights Act. He went to the White House in 1963, asking for not just the Civil Rights Act, but a Voting Rights Act. Kennedy was assassinated, but Johnson implemented the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. And you know what? He went to the White House after the Voting Rights Act and said, we need an economic bill of rights.
That's right.
And so he never stopped asking. And thank God for that.
And even if he knew that he was going to draw the ire of the president. See, too many of the people.
Invited back.
Yeah. I mean, because, that's what happens. My mother, someone just asked my mother, they just interviewed her about my father's 80th birthday. And she said, look, wait a minute, we're outsiders. She said, my husband and I have had the privilege of being outsiders. We were born out of wedlock. Nobody wanted us. And that has been our lot in life. And I am okay. She said, I am not just okay with it. I'm thrilled with that. That's what I do. God put me here. And so I'm fine with that. Too many of us, I'm not, and look, I'm not going to let an invitation. These people came to my father years ago, and we're still on Facebook, and I'm going to get off in a hot second. They came to my father years ago when he and my mother had pot nor window. They would even have to take collection for their for their rent. Because my father was hired by Dr. King a semester shy of his. My parents didn't have any money. Semester shy of his getting his master's in divinity at the University of Chicago at seminary, and they had to move out the dorm for married families, so they had to get an apartment quickly. And the Leak family, very prominent, the most prominent a black funeral family here in Chicago. They took us in. Wonderful human beings. We lived on the third floor of their walk up, and they lived on the second floor. And there was a man who owned a store, white owner, and he didn't have, he at the time didn't have blacks who had working for him or enough blacks. So he came to my father and said, Reverend, I want to do you a favor. I know you're a young man with a young family, and we want to give you, I think, a sofa set, or I think it was a bed. And my father said, "Oh, that's nice, but don't think I won't get up out of the same bed and boycott you in the morning."
Well, if I'm not mistaken, you can tell me if this is true. Because I think I recall the story that at one point Mayor Daley tried to convince Reverend Jackson that maybe he should take a job as a toll collector.
Well, this is what happened.
It would be secure.
Well, this is what happened. Dad came up to Chicago. He had been president of the student government at North Carolina A&T State University. He was the president of his fraternity on campus, and he was their national student vice president. All of the fraternities have a vice president who represents the students on their board, and he was the national vice president. In fact, he ran against Douglas Wilder, who became governor of Virginia.
Well,
Yeah, they're frat
they
brothers
both accomplished something.
from their college days. And so he came up here, and he was a young man full of promise. He turned down a spot at Duke University Law School. Reverend Dr. Sam Proctor said, "I think the University of Chicago and seminary will be a better fit for you." So that having been said, he comes up with all of these wonderful recommendations, including a letter of introduction from the governor of the state of North Carolina. And when the mayor met him, instead of giving him a nice little job at City Hall or someplace, he wanted him to become a toll collector. And my father said, And he had met John Johnson and his mother, Miss Gertrude, who was alive at the time. And Miss Gertrude said, "Well, son, how's the job search coming?" And he said, "Well, he relayed that he wants me to be a toll collector." She said, "You need to go see my son, Johnny." That's what she calls her son. And when my father sat with him, he said, "You know what, son, you are a communicator. You need to be out with people." And at the time, Jet magazines were not sold in stores. The reason they were sold in stores was because Reverend fought to get them on the bookshelves, on the magazine shelves, because you couldn't buy a Jet in the grocery store. And so you had to buy them. People sold them on the streets, and he's someone who sold Jets. But as the Lord would have it, that he ended up meeting a lot of people, organizing a lot of people. It was a blessing, But that having been said, that's what happened. Yeah, Mayor Daley, saw this black guy and wanted to put him in a toll booth, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's honorable work, but when you have these kind of recommendations,
if they wanted to put him in that toll booth so he wouldn't beat people, or at least not beat him for more than a second, but he took the chance.
Well, what the thing is, they didn't mind giving some black people some nice jobs here, but you had to be under the boot of the machine, and that was never going to be Reverend's lot. He was never going to do that. Right. So, no, you got it. So I'm just filling in some of the details for you.
Fabulous. So I remember him mentioning that once many years ago and being struck by the fact that that's how power works, right? Power, it does see talented young people, and it says, "Oh, okay, we can incorporate them in, right? We can bring them into the circle and make them reliant on us." And the wise folks of many races, many backgrounds, many experiences say, "No, I'm gonna continue to be an outsider. I'm going to continue to challenge the status quo because I don't want to be the only one that goes up, right? Yeah. I want a lot of people to come up." And that's right. I mean, look, it circles around to our conversation today. We always have a struggle between the elite and the great mass of people. The elites will write their own rules. They will. And their rules are designed to keep them in power. Get it. It is our job to make sure that power is spread to the great masses. And
Absolutely.
that is not easy, but it is necessary.
You know, and the fight is ongoing. The fight is ongoing. But that's why I want everybody to get your book, because you will see that that John, that Reverend Jackson, that Jim Hightower, that Bernie Sanders, that Ro Khanna, Nina Turner, all these people are part of a continuum. And you have to keep on fighting. You have to keep on fighting.
That's right.
You have Jamila Priapal, all the Maxine Waters. You have to keep on fighting. You have to keep on fighting. You know, Senator Sanders called when Mom and Dad were in the hospital, and he, bless his heart, he said, "Now you've got to tell Jesse that what he's got to do is get up out of that bed, because he and I have some more marching to do. We have more marching to do." Bless his heart. I said, "Bless your heart." He said, "I'm serious. Santita, I'm serious." I said, "I've got you."
He was serious, and you know full well he was serious.
I know he was.
That call was a call of sympathy, but also a call of, saying, I can't afford to lose you at this point. I need you with me.
I called Dad in the hospital right after that. You know when you can call him. Bless his heart. My father said, tell him I'm getting better every day. I said, bless his heart, and he was out in a week. Yeah.
That's the thing you have to watch out for with your dad, though. He's gonna decide he's better when he could use another few days.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Look, let me tell you. My father left the hospital and went right to the office, John. I said, wow.
He was off in Washington in no time. Look, I've seen him. I have seen him healthy and sick, and I have seen him, and there's not that much of a difference.
He keeps on going.
Feeling physically well, he just keeps going, and that's why we're going to have him for a long time.
Well, I just pray that
we've around for a long time.
God has been good, and God has been good, and He's preserved my parents and our family, and I'm just grateful. I'm just really grateful that and that they want to continue to do the work. But I love you, John. I'm gonna get on out of here and let you, as I'm hearing the wind blowing in the background.
That's right. I'm out front of my place. So I got to go do things. You have to go do things. What an honor to be with you today.
Always a joy. But I'm gonna reach back out to you because I have a couple of things I want to run past you. Particularly about all of this stuff. Okay.
Okay.
Sending you much love.
Much love right back at you.
Oh. Much love to all of you, Raphael and Kenneth and Dave and Daryl and it's always such a joy. Lorraine, sweet Lorraine. Sending all of you my love today. See you in the morning, God willing. Wait a minute, let me move my jewelry. Okay.